Hello and welcome to Photographic Connections, the podcast where we create connection to self, nature and others through the art of photography. My name is Kim Grant, the founder of Photographic Connections and your host for this podcast. And today, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Lisa Frost onto the podcast. Lisa is an Australian landscape photographer who has a very deep connection with the natural world. We speak about the joy of appreciating all the beauty that life can bring, helping others with their photographic vision, and how starting her YouTube channel changed her photographic process. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Lisa Frost. Hi Lisa, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast this week. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you because a number of our listeners have recommended you for the podcast because your philosophy and relationship to nature and photography is very well suited for what Photographic Connections is all about. So we'll dive into that in very many different ways today. But before we do, I wondered if you could go way back to the beginning of your journey and share the story of what got you into photography in the first place.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. It's really lovely to be here. And thank you to the listeners that put me forward. It's really nice to hear. I've had a lot of people actually that have suggested you as a good connection for me, that they see a lot of, I think, similar sort of, philosophies between the two of us. But anyway, going back to the start. So it was just one photo, I think, that made me want to get into photography. And it was back in 2000, and I was in New Zealand on a ski trip with some friends, and I had like a little APS film point and shoot camera. And we were staying in Queenstown and had this beautiful view of across the lake, and there were these beautiful yellow trees and the big mountains in the background, and I put it into panorama mode and took a photo. And when I got the photos back, I looked at that photo and I went, I want to get an SLR and actually learn how to do this properly. So yeah, it all came from there. And I didn't really know at the time when I bought my camera, so that was Christmas that year. I bought it as a Christmas present for myself, an EOS 300, exactly what sort of photography I would get caught up with. But landscape photography ended up being, I guess, where my heart lay. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think it's incredible that one image got you into photography. It really shows, I think, the power that photography can bring us, that one photograph, one scene just sparked that within you and led down this incredible route that you've now gone on, really connecting with nature. And you're based on the Gold Coast in Australia. So how do you find that landscape really suits what you enjoy to photograph?
Yeah, look, I'm really lucky here. There's a lot of diversity in our landscapes around. So what the Gold Coast is best known for, I think, is probably the beaches. And that's certainly where I used to kind of focus my efforts. But we also have this kind of lovely hinterland area, some rainforests and things that aren't too far away. And that's kind of probably where my heart really lies, is with trees and rainforests. And actually I've been trying to get a lot more into the Australian bush that's kind of local around where I live as well, which is quite a challenge. It's very messy, but yeah, I'm really enjoying getting a lot more into that sort of woodland photography in Australian style.
It's really, I love there how, living on the Gold Coast, as you rightly said, everybody kind of thinks about the beaches and the kind of golden sands and all the kind of coastal photography. And I love how you've kind of carved your own path and you've gone maybe off the beaten track a little bit and you're photographing the things that really speak to you. And I guess, where did your connection with nature first begin? Have you always loved nature from a very young age?
Look, probably it's come, I think, largely hand in hand with the photography. I kind of liked animals and that sort of thing, but the outdoors wasn't something I really grew up, other than living, outdoors quite a lot as a kid, in the pool in Australia. It's very much going to the beach and that sort of thing. But I was never really like a hiker or that sort of thing. So it kind of came hand in hand with the photography. I fell in love with landscape photography, and that opened my eyes a lot more to a lot of the beauty that's around us. I was quite concerned when I first started photography that I might end up getting kind of caught up of always seeing life through a camera and not actually being there and experiencing it. But it's kind of done the opposite, that I see a lot more of beauty than I ever did before I took up photography.
Wow. That's so beautiful. I find a lot of people that I've spoken to in this podcast have had a deep connection with nature from a young age, but there has been one or two others who have found that photography has actually given them that connection. It's opened their eyes to a whole new different world around them. And I love that you say there that you're beginning, or you have started to see, things that you never saw before. It really does kind of open up our eyes to things there. And there's one thing that it says, I think it's on your YouTube channel in your description, that you kind of have this quest to share the beauty I find in the natural world. So where did your kind of journey into YouTube begin? Because it's quite a big thing, I think, to do, isn't it? And to begin to share this with the world.
Yeah, it is. Look, some years ago, probably about 2007, I started wanting to try to sell my photography and make kind of more of a life out of it. I used to actually work in the IT industry and was like a database administrator and programmer and things. And I'd got out of that back in 2004 and was still trying to kind of find my way. And I did a lot of, markets, beach markets and exhibitions and all that sort of stuff, and it was quite a grind, and it ended up wearing me down, and I gave up on the whole idea, and actually didn't do a lot of photography afterwards. I found it kind of sucked a bit of the life out of it, because all I was looking at was the business and not the photography itself. So about, I don't know, 2018 or 19 or something, I guess I discovered YouTube and vlogs, which is pretty silly because YouTube's been around for ages, but I just never used to watch it, and got really into enjoying seeing other landscape photographers of where they were going and what sort of things they saw. And I just I don't know, kind of thought it looked like it would be quite fun, and that probably there weren't that many Australian landscape photographers, and certainly not many females as well around. And I thought, I might have a slightly different perspective. And so yeah, I just thought it would be fun. I hadn't had any experience with video before, so it's been a big learning curve, but it still is. It keeps going.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we think we kind of are learning something, but I think we all realise, don't we, that life is a forever-ending journey of learning, and especially when it comes to creating video, there's so many things we can learn and adapt into things there. It's a totally different world, and yeah, I love that you took that step, because it's a big thing to do in many respects, and your story there kind of almost mirrors mine. I kind of realised there was hardly anybody from Scotland doing landscape photography, and there was certainly no females on YouTube doing landscape photography at the time. So it's, like you say, it's nice to have that different perspective, and I really feel like you do have this different perspective, because you really notice the beauty around you. You really try and portray that in your images and showcase the world to everyone. And again, it says kind of on your website that too often beauty goes unnoticed or considered of little value, yet stopping to appreciate the beauty in life uplifts the spirit and fulfills us with joy. That's the opening line on your website, which I think is so beautiful, because you can see it's not about really the images for you, is it? It's about the experience and then sharing that with others.
Absolutely, yeah. And anybody who's watched my videos will know it's something I quite often say, is that it's being out there, it's enjoying the moment, it is really the experience is number one, and kind of the images come second. And I actually think for me, doing that, I'd probably take better photos by not actually making the image the number one goal. I think my enjoyment and my appreciation of the beauty is probably what helps to, make my photos better than if I was just purely focusing on them from a very technical point of view. And I do think that beauty has a lot of value in the world. I think that it's something that, because it's kind of a bit intangible compared to, you know, a lot of things going on in life, of that it can get overlooked. And yet I think a lot of the best things about humanity kind of come through being able to appreciate and express beauty. Like, it's where a lot of like love and joy and even kind of kindness and compassion come from, that we kind of tend to be nicer people when we're appreciating the beauty that there is in life.
Wow, yes. I totally agree with you there. There's some very deep words there of wisdom, which I hope will resonate with many people, because I think that's one of the beauties of photography, isn't it? I kind of have felt, I don't know how you feel, but when I began photography, it was a very technical world. I felt like I wanted to express myself very emotionally and connect with myself on a deeper level and connect with nature, but I didn't find there was much people out there speaking about that. They were more saying, this is how you take photographs, and they were using a lot of kind of terminology that I wasn't really resonating with, and everything was about the technicalities. So have you kind of found that in your journey, and if so, how have you been able to really find your voice and kind of go back to that almost innate knowing within you that this is beauty and I want to connect with it, and that's what my photography is all about?
Yeah, I completely resonate with that, of it being very structured. And one of the things when I was learning is I just self-taught through books and online. There used to be this website called photo.net. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was back in the early 2000s, and I used to just scour the forums and look at interesting questions. And I was very reluctant to ever go and get lessons in photography, because I was worried that I would have somebody else impose their vision upon me, and that I am quite easily led to think that that's the way I should do it and lose kind of my own vision. So yeah, I just kind of, I've never joined, I guess, camera clubs, which for some people could be something really positive, but I just, I guess I was always worried about getting led astray and not having a clear enough vision myself to be able to drown out the voices then. Now I'm a lot better with that. But actually there was an interesting realization I had back kind of in the early days. My grandfather was from South Australia, or my family came from South Australia originally, and he brought up this big, beautiful photography book of a local South Australian photographer who he shot with medium format, and the photography was beautiful. And I was looking through the book, and he was talking about how he only ever shot during golden hour, and that he refused to shoot at any other time of the day. And as I kind of was going through all the images, I was struck by the fact that even though they were so beautiful, there ended up being a bit of a sameness about them. And I came to realize from that how much I actually appreciate the fact that I've always thought about trying to make the most of whatever the conditions are and whatever time of day it is at the moment, rather than just narrowly saying, okay, I'm only going to shoot in these conditions. And that even though, I might not have as great photos as what, say, he did, I personally really value the variety and being able to try to find that beauty in whatever the moment is. I mean, it's a lot harder than others when you've got flat grey skies and things like that. But yeah, I mean, you just got to adapt, I guess, to the conditions. And over time, I used to probably shoot more going for that kind of poppy look, bright colours. I didn't try to oversaturate, but I've probably over the last few years gone to be a little bit more subdued, and I really appreciate other photographers who display, I guess, more natural photography rather than the kind of awe and dramatic of everything being grand and epic. And I really appreciate those quiet kind of moments that you see. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think photography is a massive process, and we kind of all go through that, don't we? And I know when I began, I was very much about colour because it was the sunsets that enticed me to begin photography. But now it's like I find them really overwhelming. When I look at a really bright image of a golden sunset, I find it overwhelming. I want to look, at the moment, I'm much more into kind of blues and greens and being kind of in the kind of foliage or that more calming imagery. And I definitely find that kind of process of finding ourselves. And and you mentioned there about being led astray, and I find that really interesting, because I think there is a lot out there of this kind of preconceived idea that this is how we should do photography. This is the settings you should use. This is the gear you should use. And I'm finding a lot of people are kind of coming to me or being drawn to me in my work now because they're feeling so constricted, and there's something inside of them that they're like, this doesn't feel right. I feel like we're going through a little bit of a shift just now where things are kind of changing and people are becoming more open to actually finding themselves. I'm just finding there's this shift in the photography world of people just feeling like they want to break out of the norms. Are you kind of finding that as well?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly the people who I talk to on my channel have expressed that. Earlier this year, I put up a video about photo critiques and how there's ways in which I think they can be really hurtful to your photography. And I got amazing response of a lot of people who kind of shared a similar sort of view of not wanting other people's kind of dogma, I guess you'd say, to encroach upon their own artistic vision and creativity. So yeah, I definitely think that there is that shift, although, I mean, sometimes it could just be that I've shifted and therefore I see kind of have moved more into that. Because certainly, like a couple of years ago in Instagram, I had a bit of a purge of accounts that were the big, epic, dramatic ones. I was like, I just don't feel like seeing these anymore. Fantastic photographers, but they're just not what I'm connecting with. So, yeah.
Critique can be a really interesting thing, can't it? Because I think there's different ways of doing it. And I think especially in maybe the more traditional sense, people feel very... we want, our work to be able to be expressive, and we don't want people like to impose like this is wrong or this is right on us. So I think when I'm kind of working with people, I always ask them, what did you see in the scene and what were you trying to portray in their image? So rather than like critiquing them and telling them what's wrong or right, I might say, okay, this is a subject that was really interesting you, but it's very small in your frame. Have you considered, opening that up? So there's definitely different ways of approaching this, isn't it? And I think for me, I want to give people the autonomy to tell me what they want out of their photography and what they want to create. And that's my kind of vision for the future of photography. It's less of this is what you do and this is what you don't do, and more of this, what are you wanting to photograph and create and express, and how can I help you to achieve that?
Yeah, I completely, I'm on the same page with you there. I think critiquing when it's an inquiry and a dialogue, when you're actually go to understand what the other person's vision was, what it was they were drawn to, what it was they were trying to achieve, and maybe also what it is that they feel they're kind of having difficulty with, I think can be very valuable. The critiques that are just, and particularly are ones that are kind of given unsolicited are not particularly useful to people, because generally those sorts of ones where if you don't have any information from the person, then all you can really do is say how you would take the photo. So like if somebody asks me to critique something and I'm not given anything else, the only thing I could ever tell them is how I would do it, which isn't necessarily helpful for them because their vision might be quite different to what mine is.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting world, isn't it? I don't know if you find with your YouTube, but I sometimes get comments as well, which I'm sure are coming from a very kind place of offering some suggestions. But where, you might get this people saying, oh, you should have to photograph that in black and white, or you should have thought of doing this or thought of that, and why are you photographing in such high ISO values, which is actually what your last video was about as well.
Yes.
It's like it's an interesting, isn't it? It's like a lot of this preconceived ideas of that this is kind of our artwork, our photography, our expression, but yet there is this almost this unsolicited or unasked for critique and advice that can be quite difficult sometimes to get around. And I find it interesting that you spoke a little bit back there about not joining camera clubs because you didn't want to maybe be swayed in different directions. And I find it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know a lot of people that have benefited a lot from camera clubs, but equally I've met a lot of people that are struggling so much with the competition element. It's not quite what they were hoping for, and they feel very enclosed. And I find it very interesting that we've both kind of experienced that in our own journeys.
Yeah, I think different things work for different people, and I mean, obviously, different camera clubs have different. The whole feel or what their focus is can be quite different. So it's certainly not a one size fits all. And what works for me, I don't necessarily think works for everybody. And it's the same with actually composing photos that I hear a lot. People talking about kind of rules or kind of different things like this for composition. And while there's something I am aware of, and I probably think about more when I'm going over my photos afterwards, I actually can't, or I can, I don't take very good photos if that's what I'm thinking about at the time when I'm taking them. I've gone through times where I've thought, okay, all right, let's analyze and think about how I want to compose it. Let's get the foreground element, and let's get the leading line, and let's get all this stuff. And the photos suck. They're just so bad. I've just realized that for me, I kind of have to take photos from gut feel of what feels right to me, of what feels balanced, and that there's the emotion. And sometimes it does mean that I can end up kind of making a few little technical faux pas here and there because I just was concentrating so much, I guess, on the subject and maybe not as much on the technical aspects. But I've realised that I just have to accept that, because if I get too caught up in the thinking part of it, the photography, the compositions just don't happen. They're so boring and they just, I guess, lifeless. They're like what the AI stuff is creating. It's like it's all very pretty, but just lacks soul.
Yes, I love that you brought that up there about the feeling element, because I'm totally realising that and going through this huge transition right now in my photography work. And it was really interesting actually this month. I do a webinar every month for my community members that are part of the Photographic Connections community. And this month I showed them images that I created based on how we're told we should take images. So images I've had in my videos that are using certain filters, certain compositional techniques, ones that I've really thought out, been like, right, yeah, this is rule of thirds, this is the right filters. And as you say, they're very soulless and lifeless. They're just, oh, it's another waterfall as a long exposure. It doesn't mean anything. And then I've showed images where I've gone back to the same location the next day, just completely open to photographing whatever I'm drawn to. And the imagery, it just comes alive. It's when you look at that side by side, getting into that zone of this is how we are told we should do it and being very technical, and then looking at the images that are created from a place of feeling, the contrast is absolutely incredible. And I love that you've noticed that in your work as well, because I really think as almost like the artistic side of photography and also the expressive side, if we get stuck in the technicalities, it's very difficult to do that. But equally, I find some of the most acclaimed photographers out there are the ones that break the rules, that don't think about the technicalities. They try different things, they break the rules, and that's where the magic happens, because it's coming from a place of heart and soul.
Yeah, Absolutely. That's a really interesting that you've actually gone and done that experiment of going out and taking one way and then the next day the other. That's amazing. But
Yeah.
I often think, because I don't hear many people talking about this. It's like, is it just me? Do other people find that it's really helpful to focus on the composition rules? As I said, I think different people work in different ways, and our brains operate in different ways. But definitely, kind of getting into the feeling and not kind of being able to, I guess, connect to your location certainly makes a difference to me.
Yeah. I guess one thing I wanted to ask you was I just look at kind of some of the words that you use a lot, like the soul and connecting to the divine through photography. Have you got quite a kind of spiritual side to you, would you say?
I probably it's funny. It's something years ago I probably explored a bit more, and I've gotten a lot more caught up, nowadays in the practicalities of life, and haven't thought about it that much. But I guess I do. I'm not. I'm an agnostic person. I don't follow any particular religion or anything like that. But certainly, I don't know. There's more than what we see, I guess. and I did some years ago. I used to write poetry. It's something I haven't done a lot of lately. I find I need to have a lot of space of kind of not much else going on in order to be able to do that. But some years ago, I wrote a poem called Love This Moment that I ended up turning into a little book. And that probably is a very good thing that encompasses my point of view, although also something that I actually need to hear sometimes, reminders for myself as well, about not getting so caught up in my head, but actually just being here right now in the moment, and appreciating where I am instead of going off into little tangents, because I certainly can do that. I can be a very analytical person and overanalyze stuff. So, I don't know if that's answered the question or not.
I think it's a very complex question, isn't it? I think, as I'm just hearing you speaking there a lot about feeling and emotion and the creativity side of things, and it's just kind of, it's almost like we really sense there's something more to life than what we are necessarily able to see. And I feel like when we really engage with that from a creative perspective, it can just create much more of interesting imagery. And I love how you brought up there about you writing poetry, because it's something I was going to ask you about, and how it kind of relates to your photography, because I almost feel like poetry and photography kind of go hand in hand, and I love it when people can write poems that relate to the images they're creating. Is that something you've ever thought about doing?
There's a couple. One in particular I can think of, although the actual image that I wrote the poem about it isn't the greatest image in the world, so it's not one I tend to, I think, have on my website anymore. But I have occasionally been inspired from the photos or the feeling, I guess, of the images that I've taken. Sometimes it's gone the other way around, and that I've written the poem and then I think, oh, that image fits really well with that poem, and kind of expresses visually, I guess, something about what it was. Yeah, definitely the poetry is something I do want to get back into, something I enjoy doing, but I haven't made the space for it. So something I need to do, I think.
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, isn't it? I think I got into it a few years ago very briefly, and I tried to intertwine it with my photography, and I just found it brought my kind of imagery and things more to life. But again, it's something I've not done now for about 4 years, and it's definitely something I'd like to engage with more. But as you rightly say, you do need that kind of space and time for it. And I was speaking about creativity. I love that with going hand in hand with your YouTube videos, that your partner Danny is a very creative person. He does a lot of music, and I love how the majority, if not all of the music that you use on your YouTube channel has been created by him. So how do you find that works together? Because I think it's so beautiful when you get two creative people coming together who have such a close bond that can then bring that creativity together to produce something of beauty together. It's lovely.
Yeah, I'm so lucky to have him and his music, and yes, all the music that's in my videos is his creations. He started writing the music before I ever started the videos, and it came about quite by accident in a way. It was in 2017. The two of us went to Scotland actually and had a holiday, and back then he was the videographer. He has a little camcorder and he took all the video. I was terrible at it. And when we'd come home, he'd put it all together into a video of our trip. And unbeknownst to us, the audio in the camera wasn't working. So he got home to put the video together and there was no sound at all. So he decided that he would write some music to go with it. So and then the next holiday we went to Germany and he wrote some more music. So when I started my YouTube channel, I actually had some songs already that he'd written that I was able to use. And then he has written a few more since. But I've said to him, are you able to write something that's a little bit this sort of feeling? And then he'll kind of go off, and I don't know how that works. Writing music's a skill that he has a lot more in abundance than I do. So, but yeah, so I'm hoping he'll write some more soon, but we'll just see. You know, it's a bit like writing poetry. I think writing music, that you kind of need to have the space and headspace and everything for it. But yeah, I think because he loves the outdoors like I do, and when we go on holidays, he is the most patient person with my photography, because he's not a photographer himself, but he likes coming outdoors. He loves going hiking, and he'll take a book with him and just find a good spot to kick back and read or just admire the view. And however long I take is he's happy with, as long as there's a pub at the end of the day where he can have a couple of beers and a good feed, then he's a happy fellow. So I think probably because we have so much in common, he's able to write these songs that fit well with the sort of feeling that I'm going for in the videos. And a lot of people often comment on that.
It's so beautiful to have that partnership. It creates that uniqueness as well, I really feel too, and being able to work together and just have that uniqueness, because of course the vast majority of people on YouTube, myself included, will use obviously some of these websites where you get all this royalty free music, but then you see the same songs popping up in everybody's videos. And it's definitely something that I've always considered and thought about, is like, how do you create music that's a bit more unique and a bit more to you and your theme and everything. And I just love that you've been able to connect with somebody in life who has very similar interests and who you can work together in that way. I think it's really, really beautiful. And you also kind of claim that YouTube completely almost changed your photographic kind of process and the way that you view your photography. So how did YouTube change that for you?
I think I used to be, not when I was on holidays. When I was on holidays, I was fine. But when I was at home, I was always got caught in the perfectionistic mindset. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'll never be fully cured, I don't think. But I used to always think, I'll go out when the conditions are perfect. And, how often does that happen? That ahead of time that they're going to be perfect? You don't usually. And therefore I didn't go out very much. And So I think YouTube's kind of helped push me to just get out there regardless of whatever the conditions were and take photos. And it's been fantastic because I find I enjoy being out in kind of almost anything. Probably when it's really windy is about the only time I really don't like it that much. Yeah, even rain and stuff. As long as I've got the right clothing on, I quite enjoy getting out there in the rain. I enjoy making the videos probably as much as I enjoy the photography, actually, which I think is important. I think it would be difficult to keep doing a YouTube channel if you kind of always felt like the videos were pulling you away from the photography and you didn't enjoy that kind of part of the creative process as well. So it's been really, really good for me. And particularly I started just at the start of 2020 before everything went crazy in the world. And Danny actually was stood down from work for 2 years during that time. And then we had some other issues kind of because of that. And I found that the videos kind of really helped keep me sane, I guess you might say, during that time. And if it had just been photography, I think it would have been easy for me just to say, oh, I've got all this other stuff. But I guess the videos make me more accountable of getting out there and doing it. So yeah, I'm very grateful, and I'm very grateful to all my supporters who have, always encouraging me. I don't have a very big, a great big channel, but I'm very, very grateful for the supporters I have because, they're a wonderful group of people.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear, Lisa. And I love how you went in there to the positive almost benefits that YouTube has given you and given you that accountability to get out there. Because it is like video is a very different almost way of expressing yourself. But as you rightly said there, it gets you out in almost all weathers, all moods, and it gives you that almost weekly or fortnightly or monthly, whatever anybody's schedule is, to upload. And how has it been for you recently? Because I know you've been having, you put a video out about you've had some issues with one of your eyes, and given photography and videography can be very visual, how have you found that's maybe impeded on your work, or has it given you another new perspective on how you do things?
Look, it's probably more frustrating than anything else. So it's with my right eye, and the vision in it keeps changing. And at the moment, people may not notice, but I don't actually have a lens in this eye because it just keeps changing, and therefore anything I try to put in front of it ends up wrong, like the next day. Been to the optometrist twice, and wow. They get different readings every time. So the actual photography isn't too bad. What I'm finding probably more of a challenge has been editing the videos. I'm finding it changes from day to day, but some days being on the computer can be quite tiring. And I recorded a video 2 weeks ago that I still haven't edited. So naughty. So that's what I'll be getting into tomorrow. But yeah, it's I don't think I've got any kind of great epiphanies that have happened to me during this. Maybe in a bit more time I'll find something. But it certainly makes you realise and appreciate how much we take for granted, that we often there's so much that has to go right for our bodies to function properly, and when it's all working, we kind of just go, oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. So it's not usually until something goes wrong that you go, oh right, yeah, okay. I really appreciate that now. So I kind of appreciate just I guess also the fact that I live in an age where we have glasses and things that we can correct vision. And, there's a lot that can be fixed if you have problems with your eyes, even like quite severe ones nowadays. So, we're very lucky.
It's nice that you've been able to kind of put a spin on that and have gratitude for it and realise the times we're living in and the opportunities available to us, which is a beautiful outlook to have, I would say. Lisa, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting to speak with you, and I'm sure a lot of the things you've shared will resonate with many people. And for those who maybe aren't already connected with your work but would like to connect with you, where can they go to find you?
So on YouTube, my YouTube handle is Lisa Frost Photo. So that's probably the best place. I also have a website, which is lisafrost.com.au. I've been very naughty and haven't uploaded any photos onto their new ones for a while, so that's something I need to update. But YouTube is the best place. I'm a little bit sketchy with. I am on Instagram, and I'm also on Vero, but I'm not that great at consistently posting on either. But YouTube is where it's at, I think.
Brilliant. Great. Well, I'll link to your YouTube and your website in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Lisa. It's been an absolute joy to speak with you, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Kim.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this week's podcast. It really does mean the world to me. If you would like some guidance and support in progressing forwards with your own photography, the Photographic Connections members community may be of interest to you. We have monthly live webinars, along with weekly Zoom community catch-ups, and a Facebook group where all the members share their images that they've created during the monthly challenge. You can find all the details at photographicconnections.com. And now that this podcast has come to an end, there's only one thing left for you to do. It's time to pick up your camera and head outdoors. There's so many incredible photographic opportunities just waiting for you to discover.